All right, this is day 6. This is matrix multiplication, not just scalar multiplication. So scalar multiplication means you just have a matrix and you're multiplying some number out front. It's exactly like distribution. You just make sure that number out front gets multiplied to everything inside the matrix. Your new matrix will just be the product of that number up front and everything in your matrix. So I'm not going to explain that too much because if you look at this long enough, it should be pretty self-explanatory as long as you know what distribution is. This, however, is matrix multiplication, and it gets a little ugly, so you can try and read this and see how much it makes sense to you. You multiply the rows in the first matrix times the columns in the second matrix. You can only do a multiplication if the number of columns in the first matrix is equal to the number of rows in the second matrix. Basically, don't worry too much about the second one. You just need to know the dimensions. There are 2 rows right there and 3 columns. So that's where we get the dimensions for the first matrix. It's always rows then columns, so that's what we call dimensions. In the second matrix, you see that we have 1, 2, 3 rows. That's where we get that number. And we have 1, 2 columns. That's where we get that answer. So what needs to match are these 2 inside ones. That's saying that the columns of the first matrix match the rows of the second matrix. And then actually, the other 2 numbers, the outside ones, they end up being the dimensions of your answer. So that's a lot of information. We just got to try it out. So this first example says we have a 2 by 2 matrix. See that? It's 2 by 2, 2 rows, 2 columns. The second matrix is a 2 by 3. So that being said, we know right now that since these 2 match, the columns of the first and the rows of the second, since those match, they're the same number, we can do a matrix multiplication. And in fact, our answer will end up being a 2 by 3. All right, so here's how you do it. Deep breaths. You take this element by element. An element is just one item in a cell. And we multiply row times column. So this is going to look like 2 times 3 plus, always a plus, -1 times 5. Okay, and we can simplify that. We'll get, this is 6 plus a -5, so it's a +1. So we know right now our new matrix is going to be a 2 by 3 that we discussed. So let's make a 2 by 3 matrix for our answers. First row, second row, first column, second column, third column. You don't have to put arrows, but for this example, I want to make it kind of clear. So we know the first answer goes right there because that was the first row, first column multiplication. And this is the first row, first column. All right, so let's just do it again. Next, we're going to fill in this spot right here. We're going to do the first row, second column answer. And so we go first row, second column. That's going to say, element by element, 2 times -9 plus, it's really hard to write on this, -1 times 7. So if we simplify this, this is going to be -18 plus a -7. And if you do that, that's -25. That's our answer for the first row, second column. All right, first row, third column. That's first row, third column. 2 times 2 plus -1 times 6. It's a -6. So this is 4 plus negative, negative is positive, 6, so that's 10. Okay, we've got our whole first row. So let's start second row, first column. That's going to be in this spot. So just like before, we called it our second row, first column. Take our second row and our first column and multiply those. That's 3 times 3 plus 4 times 5. So 9 plus 20, 29. All right. Next will be your second row, second column. So second row, second column. 3 times negative 9 plus 4 times 7. So this is negative 27 plus 4 times 7 is 28. It's a nice little one. All right, you can do the last one. Try it for yourself. I'll pause. Not really, I'm still here. This is going to be our second row, third column. So second row, third column. That's 3 times 2 plus 4 times negative 6. 3 times 2 is 6 plus negative 24 gives you a negative 18. Boom. So again, to recap, it seemed easy once you got going, maybe, but it helps to write the dimensions first to 2 by 2. That way you can ensure you know whether or not you can do this multiplication. You can only do it if these two numbers match. Okay, and we had a 2 by 3 for the second. Right, and your answer always ends up being the outside two dimensions. Notice it's a 2 by 3.